let's get right into it. Number 8, Hedy Lamarr. Every time you use Wi-Fi to watch this video, you can thank a 1940s Hollywood bombshell. Hedy Lamarr wasn't just the most beautiful woman in the world, she was also a secret tech genius. Before becoming a movie star, she was married to an arms dealer. She drugged her guards and escaped in the middle of the night, fleeing to America. Instead of just living the cushy Hollywood life, Hedy decided to help fight the enemy in her own way. While other actresses were worried about their next role, she was in her house inventing military technology. She developed something called frequency hopping during World War II. It's basically playing hide and seek with radio signals. They jump around so fast that enemies can't catch them. The military laughed at her invention. They told her to stick to looking pretty in movies, but that crazy idea is now the foundation for Wi-Fi, Bluetooth, and GPS. Number 7. Abraham Lincoln, the wrestling legend. Before he was freeing slaves and running the country, young Abe was body-slamming guys left and right on the American frontier. This wasn't your modern WWE stuff with sparkly costumes and staged moves either. This was rough frontier wrestling, more like a bar fight without the bottles. Lincoln would show up to these small-town matches where everyone would gather to watch. He'd calmly take off his shirt, fold it neatly, and proceed to destroy his opponents. Any random tough guy thinking they could take down this tall beanpole would end up eating dirt. After one particularly fierce match, he got so fired up that he challenged the entire crowd. Standing in the middle of a dusty ring, he shouted, "I'm the big buck of this lick. If any of you want to try it, come on and wet your horns." Not a single person accepted his challenge. Out of his 300 matches, Lincoln only lost once. The guy was actually really clever with his moves, too, using leverage and strategy. Everyone else was basically throwing punches hoping something would land. Number 6. Mozart. Mozart wasn't some stuffy classical musician who just sat around writing fancy music. This guy had the mouth of a drunk sailor and the pranking skills of a YouTube star. His letters to his family were so dirty that historians had to censor them for hundreds of years. While other composers were writing love letters, Mozart was writing detailed descriptions about poop. This wasn't just occasional slip-ups either. He wrote entire poems about butts. His family wasn't embarrassed by his potty mouth either. They joined right in. While other noble families were discussing politics and art, the Mozarts were basically running an 18th century version of America's Funniest Home Videos. So next time you're listening to an elegant Mozart symphony, remember it was written by a guy who probably just finished making fart jokes with his sister. Number 5. Tycho Brahe's elk. Tycho Brahe, the revolutionary astronomer who mapped the stars, had a pet elk. Yeah, a full-sized elk that followed him around like a puppy. The elk would wander around his castle like it owned the place. Imagine trying to do precise astronomical calculations while a massive elk is breathing down your neck. This elk loved to party as much as Tycho did. One night at a nobleman's house, someone thought it would be funny to give the elk some beer. The elk started downing beers like a college student during spring break. The drunk elk tried to go up some stairs. The poor thing took one wrong step and tumbled down. That was the end of Tycho's party elk. Makes your cat knocking over a wine glass seem pretty tame. Number 4. Florence Nightingale. Everyone thinks Florence Nightingale was just some nice lady walking around with a lamp helping soldiers. But while other nurses were changing bandages, Florence was secretly collecting data on everything she saw. She discovered something that shocked everyone. Most soldiers weren't dying from battle wounds. They were dying from infections because the hospitals were basically giant petri dishes of disease. Imagine going to war, surviving a cannon blast, then dying because someone didn't wash their hands. Florence knew nobody would listen to a woman talking about numbers in the 1800s, so she invented a new type of chart that looked like a deadly flower blooming through the year, basically a pizza cut into slices, but some slices are way bigger than others. She walked into military meetings with these charts. The generals thought she brought some pretty pictures. Then she showed them data proving their fancy hospitals were killing more soldiers than the enemy. She wrote an 853-page report about all this, and she published it anonymously because who would listen to a woman talking about statistics in the 1850s? She was the lady who saved more lives with math than most doctors saved with medicine. Number 3. Newton's alchemy and occult interests. Everyone knows Newton as the apple guy who invented gravity, but that's like saying Gordon Ramsay just makes scrambled eggs. For 30 years, he was running a medieval Breaking Bad operation in his basement. He had a secret laboratory where he'd mix weird chemicals and write everything in code. He was searching for something called the Philosopher's Stone, not the Harry Potter kind. This one was supposed to give eternal life and turn anything into gold. The man who discovered gravity thought making magic rocks was more important. His dog Diamond knocked over a candle and set fire to 20 years of his secret research. All those coded notebooks went up in flames. Newton just looked at his dog and basically said, "Diamond, you have no idea what you just did." While he was discovering calculus and writing laws of physics, Newton was also trying to predict the apocalypse. He spent years studying the measurements of Solomon's temple, convinced it contained secret codes about the end of the world. According to his calculations, the world would end in the year 2060. Most of these writings were kept hidden until long after his death. Number 2. Conan Doyle's belief in spiritualism and fairies. Conan Doyle was the author of Sherlock Holmes. He created the world's most logical detective, but he himself believed in fairies. Not just a casual belief, but a complete conviction that fairies were dancing in his garden. While Sherlock Holmes was solving crimes with pure logic, Conan Doyle was attending seances to communicate with ghosts. It was like Batman's creator spending weekends hunting Bigfoot. In 1917, 2 young girls showed him photos they took of real fairies in their garden. These weren't even good fakes. They were literally paper cutouts from a children's book stuck on hat pins. But Doyle, this brilliant mind who wrote about deductive reasoning, fell for it completely. He wrote an entire book called The Coming of the Fairies defending these photos. He spent his fortune traveling to give lectures about ghosts and spirits. The same mind that created the most famous logical detective was getting scammed by every fortune teller in London. When his friend Harry Houdini demonstrated how mediums faked their supernatural powers, Doyle concluded that Houdini must have secret magical powers himself. He insisted the fairies were just shy around skeptics. The girls finally admitted in 1983 that the photos were fake, but Doyle went to his grave believing those paper cutouts were proof of a magical fairy kingdom. Number 1. Emperor Hirohito. While most emperors were busy doing emperor stuff, Japan's Emperor Hirohito was crawling around tide pools looking for tiny sea creatures. He had a full-on marine biology lab in the imperial palace. Imagine walking through this fancy palace and suddenly stumbling into a room full of jellyfish tanks and microscopes. While other rulers collected gold and jewels, this guy was collecting weird sea creatures. People would send him dead sea specimens as gifts from all over the world. Most kings get precious treasures, but Hirohito wanted that weird-looking crab you found. By the end of his life, he had over 28,000 specimens. He discovered more new species than most professional scientists: 23 new types of sea squirts, 7 crabs, 8 starfish, and 6 sea spiders. Most rulers want buildings named after them, but this emperor was happy having a weird blobfish carry his name. His real passion was hydrozoans, tiny tentacled creatures that live on the sea floor. During World War II, while his generals were planning battles, Hirohito was more interested in planning his next research trip to Sagami Bay. In 1975, he visited Woods Hole in Massachusetts, one of America's top marine research centers. The scientists there expected some stuffy royal ceremony. Instead, they got an emperor who couldn't stop geeking out about sea creatures. That's all for today. I'll be making similar videos in the future. Subscribe to see them.